Okay, so we're running the Bastion Torb. So yeah, it's bunker's kind of funny right now, right? Because no one's quite sure yet what the like best bunker comp is, right?
Bastion Torb.
There's well, yeah, I mean, Bastion Torb's a pretty good one. I think like Bastion May, Torb May, like May's a pretty good like anti-dive character, so she's pretty good in bunker. People still like running Junkrat sometimes. Bastion Farah is really popular. There's like there's like a lot of like different variants, right? And it's all kind of based on how much you think they're going to be playing like poke characters versus dive characters, right? Um, you know, like Bastion Widow or Bastion something along the like a Bastion Sniper would be pretty anti-poke. Like if they were trying to go like Farah Hanzo or something to you know beat your Orisa shield, then a Widow would be good there, right? But if they do something like Sombra Genji, then all of a sudden your Widow is kind of useless, right? So people I think are still trying to figure out the middle ground, like what's the best versatile comp for bunker. So yeah, I don't have an answer for it. I'm not quite sure either. We kind of have to like wait until the data's in, right? Like when more and more teams run it and sort of see what ends up winning the most. Yeah, I think the only thing that's really set is like Orisa, right? And then most people run a diva with it. So that's you know to like control flanks and contest carts or point or whatever. Baptiste is pretty much set as well. I think pretty much everyone agrees that Baptiste is insane for bunker. And then the rest are kind of like up for grabs. A lot of time it's Mercy, sometimes it's Ana, sometimes it's solo support. But yeah, so a lot of different variations here that to think about. So
I
with
like it when
this
we
comp,
play Farah.
Bastion Farah is pretty common, right? Like a lot of owls, like owl games, when they went bunker, they went Bastion Farah.
Let's do that.
That's kind of like doubling down on like playing anti goats, right?
But they do that with Soul Heal, right?
No? Yeah, a lot of times, or they'll do it with like Mercy Zen or something like that. They won't go like Baptiste. They'll have, or they'll be Mercy Baptiste. So like it'll be like Baptiste is for like the Bastion and all that sort of stuff, and then Mercy just pockets the Farah. A lot of the time.
I like that plan.
But that yeah, like I said, that's like doubling down on anti goats. And if they go something like Sombra Genji, then you don't get like nearly as much value, right? So the Torb Bastion is basically saying like Bastion is pretty good like anti poke, anti like he like Bastion is really good against goats. Like he destroys goats. He's okay against poke and he's okay against dive. But he's not like really super great against either, but he is really great against goats. That's like the main like he destroys death ball like crazy. So like having this is kind of a requirement. You need something that beats goats so you don't just get ran over, right? And then Torb is more of like the versatile like character here where kind of beats dive because like having the DPS of the turret is kind of just like annoying if you try to dive. And doesn't quite beat poke as much because his
What are you
turret
talking
can
about?
still kind of get
The turret's got 100% accuracy.
right. It also has 100% taken accuracy, right? Like you're never gonna miss a turret.
I mean, you haven't played in bronze, dude.
Right. But yeah, so
Oh
if they're
my
like
God.
on Zofara, then you know, there's just gonna be a storm bow or a couple rockets and turret's gonna go down. But yeah, okay. So this comp, like looking at it, we're a little weak to poke. But let's see what they end up running here. Does anyone have any questions about like bunker comps and like what? Sorry, I kind of went on a rant there about bunker, but just want to make sure that everyone's kind of like on the same page about like what to run and where. Okay, cool. Or like the just the theory of it, not necessarily like what to run, but like the theory of like
Well,
why bunker gets ran.
well, right now, for example, it's not. Well, there's like a payload, but what's the who's the first character to contest?
Yeah. So a lot of the time, it's going to be like something along the lines of you just have Diva like dipping in and out, right? So she'll like drop just to contest real quick and then immediately fly back up because she doesn't want to get like nuked by like whatever is pushing cart. I think it kind of changes depending on what they're playing. If they're playing goats, then she needs to like drop and fly back up immediately and just like kind of do that over and over. And you probably need somebody else to like help out as well. Maybe like uh, a character like May is really good in that situation, right? Because she can just ice block or ice wall and contest the point for a really long time. Lucio's kind of decent at that because he can just like wall right around.
Yeah.
So different characters like that can usually help out. But if they're more like a dive comp or like a poke comp, usually the only person pushing cart is going to be like their diva, right? So then our diva can spend a little more time like contesting, and it's probably okay. Or like even their supports might be the person pushing cart, but generally it's not about like contesting unless it's death ball. Like if they're playing goats or a goats variant, they're trying to force the issue by like pushing the cart and making you guys stop it. If they're like a dive comp or a poke comp, they're trying to shut you down first and then they're going to push the cart later, right? So contesting the cart isn't going to be too much of an issue against if they're going to start running like anti-bunker type stuff, which they should because they're on attack, so their respawns are really close. So contesting the cart shouldn't be too difficult because we probably aren't going to have to worry about it really. But Diva generally. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, cool.
Cringe in our chat.
Probably his friends.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're running out triple just by default. I don't know if they saw, but or not triple.
Oops.
Oh, they're switching. Okay, so now they're
They're one.
triple. Okay, so they're running. Interesting. So they're running. Well, let's see if they stay on. No.
Can we try to eat the boop this time?
I tried.
That'd be huge.
Okay, so they're running on a mercy triple with soldier. This is pretty common. This is a pretty common like anti-goats triple. Not exactly sure why they're running it against bunker. So what's the first thing that kind of like pops into your guys' mind when you see this comp against bunker? Like what are our advantages? What are our disadvantages?
Of course, they have a Pharah to bring down our shield, so we have a Diva against that. And they also have a Sombra, so we have to spy check. Diva needs to make sure that she can save a bit of the shield. And at the same time, we need to be careful to not get booped by that Hammond. Note Leah Arissa, since she has less movement than the rest of the team.
Okay, good.
But we do have EE from Baptiste.
Right. So we can send Diva. Diva can worry about the Pharah, right, to make sure that we're not getting like too much like flank damage or barrage damage or whatever. Torb turret can probably take care of Sombra a lot, right? Like we probably can't get hacked if there's just like a turret like here or something, like something that's only looking at our back line. Because if she tries to reveal and tries to like hack out our bastion, she's just going to get immediately tapped by the turret. So a more defensive turret here to like interrupt the Sombra a bunch is probably pretty good. And then you don't have like Diva doesn't have to worry about the Sombra at that point, right? So yeah, and then we have to worry about boops from Hammond. We have to make sure that like when he rolls up here or rolls this way, that he doesn't get any value by like actually committing to that. We need to do something. Like basically, we just need to make sure we're scouting it, right? And then we can either halt him and keep him still, or just like burn him down with the bastion, right? Okay, good. What do we see? What about so those are the threats that we need to look out for, right? I mean, we didn't really talk about soldier, but soldier as well kind of just like dumps damage into shields, right? So kind of the same thing as Farah, but he doesn't get as good of like positioning, right? So we don't have to. Orisa shield should be able to take care of most of his damage just in general. Nades we kind of need to look out for, right? Make sure we don't get antied, or if we do, to like play the immortality in that situation. Okay, so that's like threats. What about advantages? Like what do we do well against this comp? Like where do we what do we have going for us?
Damage output.
Sure, but like why?
They have no shield. We have
Right, no shield.
damage boost Bastion and even Batiste E, as well as Torb doing his Torb thing.
Right.
I think Aristopole against Hammond pretty good. It's easy to shred, and then they have no space.
Yeah, like the Bastion Hammond matchup is kind of insane, right? Because Hammond, like he can't, like one of the big advantages of Hammond is that when he's rolling around, he doesn't have a critical box. But Bastion doesn't care about that already, right? Just so happens Bastion's spray looks like this, Hammond looks like that, right? So like every bullet hits a Hammond, and it doesn't matter whether you crit or not, because like that's kind of like the balancing factor of Hammond is like he has a really wide hurt box, but you can't crit it. And then Bastion is kind of the same thing where it's like, oh yeah, it's really wide spray, but you can't crit. So, or it's like a really high DPS, but it's like wide spray and it can't crit. So that matchup is kind of insane. So that's really good for us. Anything else? Okay. The one thing that stands out to me in all of this is no diva. Like not having defense matrix for like most of these characters is kind of crazy, right? Like all of this healing and damage is mitigated by defense matrix. All of this damage is mitigated by defense matrix, right? All of this damage is mitigated by defense matrix. Like especially if you think about the ults, right? If we're shooting through an amplification matrix, what's going to stop us from just doing a billion damage? Usually diva.
I think I'm lagging too. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Oh,
Yeah, I
It's
think
just
it's working.
Discord.
Are you guys alive?
You hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
No, yes.
Okay.
Everyone had the robot voice and
It's
Yeah.
just
people
Discord.
there. I didn't catch what you were saying last.
Okay. Yeah, so Diva, that's where I ended off, right? It's like Diva.
Yeah, the diva.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so like Diva shuts down this damage, this ultimate, right? Halts, right? Like there's so much of this team that like Diva can like really help mitigate. So them not having one is a huge advantage for us, right? Like the way we said like, oh yeah, Halt is really good, both like just to get picks and also against Hammond, but it's good against picks because there's not a Diva here, right? Like normally they would either A, eat the Halt itself, or B, just eat everything after the Halt happens, right? So that a pick can't occur. And then when we amplification matrix, like normally a Diva would just like eat that until everyone was out of line of sight. And then same thing with like Torble. If we tried to Torble, our diva would just like push into him and make sure they eat all of the like molten core stuff, the corn pops. So not having a diva here is like a really good advantage for us, and we should like recognize that and play like accordingly, right? Like a little more aggressive with our poke, like because we don't have to worry about that type of situation, right? Okay, cool. So let's see how this plays out.
I got moved.
Oops.
So it looks like there's soldier. I think this is soldier. It looks like the soldier's on the flank. Yeah.
Behind
I
us.
tried to turn
Is that
around for
Metro?
Sombra too.
Yeah. But this is a good idea from them, right? Like kind of send a soldier over here to like poke while Farah's looking this way. So they can kind of like cover a lot of angles.
Okay, I ate it.
Yeah, soldier still behind
Pulling
us.
cart.
Behind soldier.
There we're gonna.
Ball on. Oh,
Soldier behind
second.
Sombra.
There's a Sombra.
1 second. I'm
Yeah, we have
sleeping.
to.
Okay. So they are actually trying to push card a lot, right? And like I said, it's like the support who ends up doing it.
Soldier behind
second.
Sombra.
So here we could be like dropping
Again, I'm
Yeah, we
sleeping.
Diva here. Obviously, as Diva, we need to be like paying attention to the Pharah as much as possible. And then now that, especially now that the Pharah is dead, we can absolutely just like
Okay, we need to
play
rotate.
card
Soldier's
as a
behind me,
Diva.
behind. There's two behind. I'm
I need
pushing them.
this.
I'm coming
Imagine
back.
dying to Torm
Oh shit,
turret
that
is
card's so
fair.
far.
Weird champ.
Come on, Anna,
If
come.
not getting healed.
Anna, one. I'm sleeping.
You're purple.
Okay. So let's look at our kind of look at like the cooldowns we're using here. And like turret placement stuff like that. So
Round for Sombra too.
we've got turret like with the bastion. It's kind of, so what I said before was like, oh yeah, let's have a defensive turret, right? The reason why I said that is because this is kind of like doubling down. How much DPS does Bastion do? Like 500 or something like that?
Something crazy.
Yeah. So if Bastion can see it, the turret, like the way this is placed is if the turret can see it, Bastion can also see it, right? So it's like doubling up this damage together. But this is only like 50 DPS or something, right? Granted, it's guaranteed and you're never going to miss a single bullet, but it's not like drastically better, right? Like you're either doing like 300 to 400 DPS on Bastion or none at all, right? So that's why I would say like, oh, maybe like make the turret take another angle, right? And like force them to not play. So because like if you think about it, our damage output is all from this one section going outward in these like different directions, right? So it gives them a chance to like surround us and like shoot from all these different ways, right? Whereas if we had turret like off over here or like you know, like defensively somewhere like here or something that's shooting like flankers, now all of a sudden they can't like take as much space. They can only take, you know, like different areas, right? They can't just like go everywhere. So this is like a little like I think we could like move our turret a little bit to a different off angle to like get a little more value out of it, if that makes sense.
Okay, I ate it.
Yeah,
Okay,
soldier's.
and then
Yeah, soldier's still behind
Pulling
us.
cart.
okay, so we halt.
Behind.
Good. We get a lot of damage in right off this halt. Like
Okay, I ate it.
Yeah, soldier's still behind
Pulling
us.
cart.
yeah.
Behind
Good.
soldier.
So that, I mean, that basically puts Hammond down to like 1 HP, and it pulls out like his shield cooldown, so he's pretty much out of the fight for a really long time here. We should be a little more aggressive off of this though, right? Like we, obviously it's bunker, so you can't get like crazy aggressive or anything, but we should know that we're up in a lot of resources. So someone like Torb could maybe get a little more crazy, right? Like as long as you still have the overload or whatever his like armor cooldown thing is called.
I'm overloading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's that not lewd?
Everything about Torb is lewd.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Thanks, Jeff.
But oh my god, now I'm thinking about like hammer kills and stuff. Okay, so
Oh,
Hammer down.
so like with Torb, we could maybe get a little more aggressive here, right? Like we could drop down and maybe like shoot at this Ana, shoot at this Hammond, try to like clean up these kills. And if we're under threat, we can just like pop overload and like run back in here or back to our team, right? and we're not too much under threat.
Cart.
Because like Torb's actually terrifying. He is like so tanky. Like when he still has that cooldown. So we can definitely get like a little more aggressive here and like force out these situations, I think.
Soldier bind Sombra.
There's a Sombra.
1 second, I'm
Yeah, we have
sleeping.
Okay. But the turret's getting really good value, right? Like the Sombra tries to reveal to like get some work done. And it just so happens that nobody's peeking the turret right when she reveals. So it just like interrupts her. She can't get a hack off. She just has to drop and get out immediately.
1 second, I'm
Yeah, we have
sleeping.
So like we have a lot of pressure here, right? And if we had kept the cart like in this like area, like after we did that halt play, we wouldn't have to rotate at all. Like we could just stay here and keep killing things.
The Sombra.
1 second, I'm
Yeah, we have
sleeping.
Like one of the things we need to think about is like cart contest timing, right? The best time to contest the cart is when it's in a like two things to think about. When it's in a location where they're exposed when they have to push it, right? That's like one of the like all along this street, they have to be out in the open if they want to push the cart. So keeping it in this street is really, really good. And two, how much of an advantage do we have currently in the fight? Like how easy is it for us to just send someone to go contest cart? Because we don't really need them to do other things, right? Here, like, when we've got Hammond 1 HP, Anna's 1 HP,
There's a Sombra.
Sombra gets
Second, I'm
forced
sleeping.
out, Farah dies, right? Like, this is like, you know, if this is like a bar of like whether we're like advantaged or disadvantaged in a fight, it's like advantage, 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 right? Like we're way up here. Like we're so winning this fight, it's crazy. Like we should be able to send someone to cart to contest, which gives us kind of a disadvantage, but like we're still net positive, right, in terms of how advantaged we are in this fight. So that's something else to think about, right? Like, can we send someone to just go deal with this? Like, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we need to rotate.
Soldier spamming bind. There's 2 bind. I'm pushing them. I'm coming
So, yeah,
back.
like the fact that we can unsiege and rotate as a bunker comp tells you how advantaged we are in this fight, right? Like this shouldn't really happen. Like rotating against a triple DPS is going to be should be very, very difficult.
so
But
far.
because we're so far ahead, it
I'm on card.
ends up being okay, right?
Anna 1. I'm sleeping.
You're purple.
Where's
Anna is out of point. Anna low.
Anna.
So
where's
pretty sure
bomb?
we're gonna
Mercy,
force them
make
out
sure she
eventually,
doesn't
right?
res.
They're gonna run away.
Don't
Okay.
rip.
So think about this now. Like now that we've been forced off of this high ground, what are basically the differences that we have to think about in terms of like holding here versus now holding like this area?
Well, we're more accessible to them because they don't have to like flank to get up high ground to like get at. They can just run. Like we're gonna be on low ground mostly on this relay, and the other garbage window.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Yeah,
don't have
so-
height advantage.
Yeah. So like if you kind of just like map out like the access points of this high ground, right? It's kind of like that, right? Like these are the areas that you can approach this high ground from. It's pretty limited, right? It's like a couple funnels, like this tiny little staircase in the back, this larger staircase, but you know, still not great, right? So it's pretty tough to like approach a composition who's like up on this high ground, right? Whereas here, it's like, okay, you have this, right? You've got this, which can lead to either of these situations, right? There's even a flank back here that Afara Mercy can go, right? So there's actually like a bunch of angles now that we can kind of like get harassed from if we're holding in this little spot, right? Like Soldier could just like run back this way and then peek us from any number of like this window, this spot, that high ground back there, the low ground back there, back here. You know, like we could get shot from Soldier like 5 different angles now instead of just this guaranteed one, right? So it's like stuff like this where all of a sudden we've been put in kind of like a weaker position just because we let the cart roll like a little too much, right?
Ooh.
No,
I'm
heal me.
I'm back. Help me, help me.
How do we get demacked? Oh, okay, we got hacked while we were flying in.
No, heal me.
I'm back. Help me, help me.
Okay. So why get aggressive here? Like, what are we pushing?
The person's not here to answer.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
she's
okay.
not here.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, good question, right? We're kind of like pushing in.
Help me, help me.
In general, the diva shouldn't really be like leaving the bunker comp too far, right? We can kind of play a wing, like if a diva was like over here, making sure that people don't like push us from like too many angles. That would be good. But we need to be like, we need to be in turret range so that the Sombra doesn't hack us for free. And we need to be in flight range. We don't want to fly away. We want to fly back, right? But that goes for basically everybody, right? Like you don't want to stray far enough away from the bunker that you can't just return immediately, right? And that depends from like character to character.
Right side. Garage.
Like a Baptiste could drop off a high ground real quick because he can just jump back up. That's fine. But a Narissa obviously wouldn't want to do that.
Why? The Ursa just moves the shield with her, dude. She is the bunker.
Yeah.
No, I could just do that thing where when I get pulled, I fortify, so I just go up flying.
Oh, true, true.
That's like 900 IQ. They won't know.
They fucked up the red.
Yeah, we hope they pull us back up to high ground. I like that.
Yeah, they're gonna do it.
Sombra back.
Okay, so then Sombra's kind of harassing our back line. We get the pick on Farah. She like overflies. Why does she fly so high?
Mercy left.
On the right, there is a ball.
Hold on. Does she also rocket jump herself? She rocket jumps herself, so she's like half HP when she gets to the top, and then just gets melted.
On the right.
All right, whatever. Okay, and then they mess up the res too.
Sombra back.
Yeah. Yikes. Okay, so they're a little off in terms of like what they're doing, right? Like, if they were playing this a little better, they would have done all of these things at the same time, right? Like they would have, like ground peaked the Farah, maybe not like fly into the air, or if she was gonna peak, it would be from like an angle that's like really difficult to, guess, right? Like flying over these buildings and shooting from like an extreme vertical angle instead of like somewhere you can see in your FOV. Soldier would be, I think that's Soldier, would be peaking at the same time as the Sombra, as the Farah, right? And then they have these like angles. Like this is actually a pretty good setup from them. Had their Farah been like a little bit over to the side, right? Because then all of a sudden it's like, where do you guys look? You know, it's pretty tough to like pick an angle. But their timing is a little scuffed, and everybody gets forced out at different times. Like Farah's dead, then Sombra gets forced out, then the Hammond starts peaking.
Soldier right, soldier right.
Pulling cart.
But this is like something that you guys need to be worried about, right? Is if this happened all at the same time, what would we end up doing? Right? Like, who would go on who? Who would deal with who? What do you guys think?
Devon Farah.
Devon Farah, yeah, I like that. Okay, so let's go down the line. Who's Bastion on?
Ball.
Good. Diva on Farah, we already said, right? These don't really matter too much, but like because they're trying to heal, right?
Babs.
Who would Torb?
I mean Torb.
Torb could one
defense
Soldier.
turret and Soldier.
Yeah. So Torb, like the cool thing about Torb, right, is Torb can force out Soldier with his body and then Sombra with his turret, right? So if a Torb starts running at a Soldier with like overload available, Soldier's terrified, right? And then Sombra can't really get any work done if there's a turret like waiting for her. So yeah, Torb can kind of like force out both people. And then Orisa kind of is like, you know, kind of like one of these where she doesn't really force anybody out, but she like helps deal with people. Like anyone she sees as a threat, she can help peel by like halting them. Or she could either halt the Soldier back into the Torb, or she could halt the Sombra back into the turret. or she could just halt the ball like into the Bastion bullets, right? Or even she could halt the Ana and like harass the Ana, right? Like that's even an option potentially. Just depends on where you think you can get the most value. Okay, cool.
Oh, I got
Soldier right, soldier right.
Yeah, a big part of
Pulling
Overwatch
cart.
is just like taking the
Soldier
matchups
all the way
that
right.
you like win, right? Like
Almost
even though
have-
it's a 6v6, there's a lot of like micro 1v1s that are going on, and taking those to your advantage is very good.
Juice?
This Anna under bridge.
I did it.
Okay, so we tank mode here. Why tank mode, Bree?
Back it up.
Damage.
Except it's less damage than turret
Alright,
one,
High
sadly.
Go Rosing.
Kills low.
Sombra back.
Can you back it up? Okay. They fucked up the red.
Back it up. Is it not playing for you?
Yeah, well, it's playing now. It's playing now.
Pulling cart.
Okay.
I just
Soldier all
killed
way right.
the Pharah on my screen.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I'm at like.
Cause there's
a
like
little-
3 on cart right there, so I was gonna get a lot of splash.
Oh, okay.
They fucked up the red.
Oh, I got
Soldier right, soldier
Gotcha.
right.
Yeah, when I see the
Pulling cart.
Soldier all the way right.
The ball and Mercy back.
Almost have my juice.
yeah.
Join
See,
it
there's
on
like
on
3.
Anna under
Look at that,
bridge.
and there was a suck you could have maybe
Somebody
got if
behind
I had
us.
better aim. Could have got the fucking fat kill there.
Yeah. Okay.
Is he not killed?
So one thing, a lot of the time, that what else can we use tank mode for? What's like the big use?
Getting high ground.
That's one. That's a little colorblind. Thinking
Hey,
of using the
hey,
ult
X
just to get
team,
the high
X
ground.
teammate, dude, X teammate. You know, gotta
Um,
learn.
Yeah. What else? What else can we use it for? So Bastion DPS goes like this, right? It goes recon, tank, turret, right?
Right.
So if we are forced into recon, that's like the worst situation, right? So when they EMP, if we tank, we're at least higher damage than we would be otherwise, right?
True.
Because we can't turret. We absolutely can't turret while we're hacked. But if we tank, we're not going to get hacked out of tank. So one of the really common uses of tank when we're up against the Sombra is to do it on reaction to EMP. And then that way we at least still have like a really high threat of damage. It's just not as much as turret. But we weren't going to be able to turret anyways because EMP. So and they're really close to EMP. So tank would have been nice here. Okay.
See, that's something I never considered, dude, because I don't play fucking Bastion.
right. Yeah. It's something. So when we're playing bunker, it's definitely something we need to think about though, because the EMP is coming, right? It's
coming, Monka W. We forgot Monka W.
It is. It's like doom, right? Like it's on the horizon. It's this ever impending team fight win.
Oh yeah, you're saying it's like the White Walkers? Because let me tell you how that ended up.
Okay. All right. So basically what we have to do is we have to come up with like how can we somehow live through this EMP, right? Especially with their team, because you know what they're going to do? What they're about to do is they are going to EMP barrage visor mines you guys, right? Like they're just going to dump everything. They're probably even going to nano the Hammond, who's going to like mines pile driver during EMP barrage visor, right? How do we survive this onslaught?
Mortality field smile.
Right. So like things are going to get kind of crazy, right? And we have to decide like, okay, how do we survive this? A lot of it comes down to like LOSing, right? Like we want to make sure like, try to tank mode, maybe have some people LOS like Baptiste. Mercy can like Val can try to like get away. Diva definitely needs to LOS the EMP. Diva cannot be in the EMP, otherwise this is going to get too much value, right? Just both of these are going to get too much value. So Diva can hide, wait for the EMP, then try to eat as much of the visor barrage as they can, and then while everybody else is like running away and getting ready to like re-engage in a way, once we're unhacked, right? And then maybe even we use like potentially even use Torbolt to try and like clear the ground, like clear the mines or like threaten the area around us so people can't like chase us as easy. So maybe we like hide these two and like do something along those lines, right? But there's a lot of like I mean, this is the problem with bunker is like there's not a whole lot of solutions to try to beat EMP. It's pretty
I
tough.
press E and walk towards him, and he runs.
Careful for EMP
Getting picks
Thrash.
repeatedly is a
She's
good
still here.
They're buzzing.
solution.
Just kill them.
Yeah.
I cannot.
What was that nade?
They're
Was there a
buzzing.
nade flyby?
There is fair. I think the solution is we just spy
You
check.
watch some videos.
You
Watch some
watch-
Someone's
videos.
been in
I
workshop,
cannot reach you.
Yeah.
Yeah, me neither.
except they haven't because that nade is horrible. But okay.
Yeah, if you get a mech there.
Okay, so there's the EMP. So nobody hid. So we're 6 hacked. There's the visor.
She's one.
Lines.
I can't matrix.
There's the barrage. All right. So we try to come back like after the hack comes off. We use bomb. We use like molten core. But it's kind of too late, right? Like getting
Understand
hit
a point?
by 6 as the EMP is like
Mercy low.
what? Hold on.
That mercy.
Hold on. How did what happened to Bree? Oh, so, okay. So Bree is the only person that like hid like after the EMP. Is the only person that like ran into the cover that I was like, you know, potentially suggesting, right? Like, oh yeah, maybe we go here.
Five head, dude. 5 head, right?
Right. And then you end up like flank bastioning.
Dude, look at
Flank
this.
bastion new meta. Look at that.
Bro, I learned a couple things from colorblind. Okay, I might not have
Understand.
learned much, but I learned a couple things.
Yeah.
Honor
So
that.
Anna gets stuck between the fountain and the car and gets railed. That's so funny. And then like Mercy
And-
challenges, like what is happening? So this fight's all of a sudden
Soldier,
like kind of
man.
winnable because
Yeah,
we have
dude.
our Baptiste Bastion still alive.
Look, I just got both supports,
Still got
dude.
this.
Both of them.
Max of
That's
health.
actually fucking huge.
And then their soldier dies to Baby Diva. Oh my god. While he's in heal pad, what's
Mercy
happening?
low.
I'm so confused. He's in heal pad as he demechs the diva and he just gets
You still got this?
You know,
destroyed.
sometimes it just be like that.
Yeah, sometimes you frag out, right? Like it happens.
With a punch.
Yeah. Oh man,
I
that's
have
awesome.
found-
Number one.
Okay, so I mean this fight should have been lost, right? But you guys
there's
frag
no-
out.
Back.
Okay, infinite quotes. There's no way you guys can win this if they use all their. If everyone gets, if 6 people get EMP,
Hey.
there's no way you can win. Okay. Okay.
They didn't nano. They didn't nano.
Oh,
That's the...
oh, my bad, my bad.
Oh man. That's but okay, that's crazy, right? Like
Guys,
the fact that you guys won this
Gonna
is kind of
queue
where do
insane.
you want to set up?
I'm gonna frame that and put it on my wall. There's no way that we can
here.
win
I
this.
hear it.
Okay, you're right. I was wrong. There is a way that you can win this, and it's them throwing 4 heroes.
Them being
I
Pepega.
have Bongo.
Right. Okay, but now this is great for us, right? Like now we're in a situation where, you know, it's debatable whether or not they're even going to be able to build another EMP like in the last minute. Like they have to take another fight and like build EMP and use it. So this is going to be pretty tough for them. This is a really good spot for you guys. Also, their Pharah is like hard throwing.
They're gonna have. It's just to Anzo.
Okay. So Pharah's on the flank now. So now they're trying like a little bit of a better approach, right? And they've switched to Hanzo, so like more shield spam. Like less flank, more shield spam, right? But they're doing the same thing as before, right? So it's the same thing that I was talking about before where like we all need to divide up our jobs and kill the right stuff.
Farah behind.
Oh, I got boop. Sorry.
Okay, we tank again.
You're purple.
I got boop. Sorry.
Yeah. Again, we probably should be staying in turret and like melting this Hammond, but tank form, try and get picks on the supports, I guess, makes sense. Especially when they're probably not close to EMP anymore. So use it.
Sombra one. I'm trying to matrix.
Good.
Stay close to me.
Ball behind, pulling. Ball's one.
Ball.
Ooh's on point.
Oh my god, Diana!
Hanzo behind, Hanzo behind.
Okay. We use. I was just gonna bring up. We haven't used the amplification matrix like at any point during this, right? What do you guys think is like kind of the best time to use it?
Or when they're like engaging, like as soon as they've like peeked from cover and they've like moved far enough to where like they don't have the time to get back before
Right.
they would get melted.
Yeah, like the moment they actually start like committing to an engage, right?
Yeah.
And in this situation, it's funny because like we probably actually would have put the matrix behind us, right? Because they were rolling out from like these spots. So like our bastion would like usually is like looking forward, but because they're like engaging from behind, we would put the matrix here so that the bastion can do all the damage behind us. That also gives us kind of an advantage too in that like we can heal the bastion, like because we're probably standing here as the Baptiste and then we're like rotating forward, and we can like heal through the matrix as we're running through it or whatever, because that's like the two big things, right? The two big things that amp matrix is used for is amping our damage, obviously, but it's also amping our healing. A Baptiste shooting through an amp matrix is like insane healing per second, right?
Oh.
It's crazy.
I didn't know it amped the healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His grenade, any projectile, like Ana,
Yeah.
like an Ana Baptiste pocketing something through an amp matrix, it's getting like I think it's like what it's like 500 heals per second or something. Like
Throwing a nade inside that is juicy.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you throw a nade too. It's like, oh my god, they're getting so much healing. Like it's impossible to die unless you get one shot. So yeah, so there's like two different ways to use it. The damage and the healing are both really good, right? So Orisa, like if Bastion's here and we put the matrix here, Orissa's still here, so we're like healing both of them through it as we're kind of like rotating, and then the Bastion's like doing all this damage on the people behind. So yeah, it can be used kind of like multi-purpose, right?
Oh my god, Diana!
Hanzo behind, Hanzo behind.
I cannot reach you.
Where's the card?
So now we're in that territory that I was talking about, right? Where like there are 10 seconds left and they still don't have an EMP, so like they only got one EMP fight this entire time, which is I think a really good it's a good example of like how much Torb is doing, right? Like in general, there might not be like a whole bunch of value that we're seeing directly out of like Molten Core or Torb kills or whatever, but the fact that they got one EMP in 4 minutes is like says a lot about like how much the turret is pressuring out this Sombra.
Getting more juicies and sombras. Let's go.
No.
More cummies.
Oh my god.
Gashi hyper.
Yeah, so now they're just trying to like touch cartons, basically.
Ball.
Okay, interesting arrow.
Oh, he's trying to get me, dude. Look at that.
Yeah, if this arrow is better, we can just like throw immortality here, right? Like one big thing about like the Hanzo arrow is that immortality can't break by the dragons. Because the dragons don't do any damage to placeables at all. So Torb turret won't die in it. The immortality field won't die in
I'm
it.
on Sombra. Sombra's half. Pulling ball.
Hello. I'm
Focus. Targets. Hammond.
Ball, Amen.
not today.
Did we tank mode for the EMP this time? Ah, nice. We got like just in time.
Look at that. I'm learning. Not today, boys.
Here we get Uwu.
You went back into the past and taught yourself the lesson.
Mora.
But yeah, notice like because we weren't like because we got to do tank mode for the EMP, we got like a lot of damage in. We like one shot the Pharah during barrage, all that.
I'm 15 though.
Dude, I always like hard focus pharaohs. I hate them. I can't stand them.
Yeah, I mean, like that's one of the big things that Bastion's really good for, right? Is that Pharos
No,
have
no,
to
no, no,
be.
no. I'm talking about any character I play.
Yeah, no.
If you
For
ever
sure.
like, if you're ever coaching a team that plays against us in a tournament, like, you need to tell them that like, okay, Bree's gonna focus your pharaoh if you have one. I
Yeah.
don't even care if I'm like playing Zen or something, dude. It's gonna be on the pharaoh.
Yeah, there's a player on like Bara that does the same thing. He was like a diva player, but he like recently has been filling for hit scan. So Zarya. So he just like tunnels the enemy diva 100% of the time. And they're like, dude, chill out. Like, he's like, I gotta assert dominance. That's just how it is. You know, I'm not
I
even
mean,
on the character anymore.
like Tachi said, sometimes it'd be like that.
Yeah, I like killing Macy's. Do it for sport.
Yep. Okay, so in terms of bunker, is there any like? So I kind of went over a lot of stuff. You know, a little bit about ult management, a little bit about positioning. Do you guys have any questions about that sort of stuff? Like, did it all kind of like make sense or?
It made sense.
Okay.
I'm gonna put
So-
sneaky turrets now.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So like the big like TLDR is try to minimize the amount of approach angles while maximizing your vision, right? If you can see a lot of their like approach, but they still have to approach from very small angles, that's ideal, right? That's why high ground is so important for bunker, is it allows for a lot of vision but low approach angles. And then in terms of ultimates, the main thing that we really are looking out for is EMP. And like making sure that we're like sort of ready for that and prepped for that and like ready to hide, ready to like hide some characters and then use those characters to like mitigate all the incoming damage while we are sustaining and getting ready to come back. Okay. Okay, cool. So that's kind of bunker in a nutshell. Is there any other stuff that you? I don't think you guys play bunker anywhere else, right? I think that was it.
Yeah, not on that pod.
Okay. I think that's, you know, mainly for the basic. So.
Oh, sorry.
Is there any other map or any other comp that you want to go over?
I honestly don't remember the scrim.
There's your browser from that scrim.
Oh well.
I don't
because
know. Did we
have
play
the last
goats?
scrim.
Here, I'll look through the YouTube.
Yeah, we played goats on Eichenwald.
I mean, let's just review goats, boys.
Looks like Eichenwald,
And I
Hanamura,
installed it from here. While you were pooping.
Oasis, Dorado.
computers.
The maps.
I don't have the drivers.
Which one? Which one am I?
You said Eichenwald, Hanamura. I think our Hanamura was kind of scuffed.
You can
We do
download
Our
have-
Oasis was cuffed too.
No, my internet is not good enough to download them.
She doesn't have the
don't have
brain
space.
drivers to play Orisa. She needs brain surgery, guys.
You could say that, like, yeah.
Are we voting?
Hanamura.
Which one? Am I doing Hanamura or Oasis?
Oh, just do Hanamura.
Diablo,
Hanamura.
Friday. But the best, the top builds.
Oh, we're
are-
actually
Wait, at what time does it start?
All right.
It's only in the evening.
Yeah.
Dang it. Because I actually have Friday off because of Victoria Day weekend. So I can play all day.
I have Monday off.
Oh, I have both.
Wow. I have
Lucky
none.
one. None?
None of them.
Summer, you're just kidding.
That sucks.
I work at the hospital.
Okay.
There's no day off ever. You're a sailor scout. You know how many times on my coffee mug I have
So
the sailor
tomorrow's, like, my
scout
Friday. I'm hyped.
stickers,
Wow.
and at work at least once. Yeah,
Leona, or Annie, Leona says she loves you.
There's a
I wanted to hear
Dean
Annie's
Circle.
coffee mug story.
Mm.
Oh, we're actually going on the pod.
I'm
I
sorry.
can do them. Well, I mean, it's hopeless now.
Oh, look at this Winston showing off, dude. Fuck off,
What do you
dude.
play?
Dude, he's not even in the good spot.
Yeah, he's got to be like
again.
doing the.
Yeah,
one
he's
up
gotta
here.
be like, he's gotta be like stuck over there,
Just go to-
Yeah.
just waiting to jump on the
The-
widow.
Go Ghost
Yeah,
Scout,
the double leap
I'm
damage.
already to Zen, so
I bubbled for energy. I won't have it.
See, putting
Oh.
the turret right here is the real.
Oh, that's the 5-head move, boy.
please. That was for
that monkey.
Okay, so we scout and counter. We see like Winston Anna goats, so we just go Zen Ryan. Good. Okay, cool.
Yeah, see, I'm learning, dude.
I
I'm
bubbled
learning.
for energy. I won't have it.
that was for
Bless you.
your Sailor
They have
Scout.
monkey. They have
I'm
monkey.
close.
You know how many times I had on my
Bubble.
Do you get
counter
chicken
glow
score?
model,
Bubble.
there's-
Okay,
I have the
so
Sailor Scout
okay, so let's wind this back.
stickers,
What's the
and
first
at
thing that we
work, at
think
least once a day, someone is like,
when we're running
"Oh,
this
you're in
against
the
this? What are our
Scout."
advantages? What are our disadvantages? Same thing about same thing I was talking about with the bunker versus the triple, right? Same question.
Bro, we have a way more brawl.
Yeah, way more brawl. This does like it's like way chunkier than this, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
this
they don't
gives-
have a shield.
Yeah, they don't have a shield, right? Like the HP of this character is a lot less than the HP of this character, right? In terms of this one has a bonus 2000, this one has a bonus 600, right? So what's the other difference? The other big difference is this, right? What does that change?
We have discords.
Right. So our target focus like melts, theirs doesn't. But what do they have that we don't?
Anti.
Anti.
Anti, but we have the divers. We had the divers.
Right.
Hey, we just went over this like an hour ago.
Yeah.
We're learning.
So so the big difference is like we have Discord, so if we target focus somebody and run them over, we are in a really good spot. But they have the anti, so we got to make sure that we either play aggressively between nades or when we play aggressive, the diva's looking directly at the Ana, right? Those are kind of like our two choices. So of those two choices, which one would you do for this choke?
Go in balls deep and hope her diva eats the nade.
Yes, definitely. Because we don't want to stand in here for a super long time, right? Because then we're giving the Winston more value. Because Winston wants time. If Winston can just like play in a choke and like zap people for a really long time and build Primal, he gets a lot more value against this comp, right? Primal is actually insanely good against goats. Because like the more split up goats is, the better, and Primal's great at doing that, right? So we kind of want to get super aggressive, but we don't want to just like there's like a lot of reasons to get aggressive here. One, we want to just make it through the choke quick. Two, we're on attack, so we want as much time as possible. Three, we want Winston to like not get that much value, right? So there's a lot of reasons for us to get really aggressive here. So we want to make sure that we're like eating the nade as we get aggressive. So kind of what I think when like if I'm rolling up on this point, what I'm thinking is let's Discord Brig or Zarya and just run them over. Right? Like whoever, like if Zarya tries to use self here for energy, just Discord her, like right here, Discord her and run her over, right? Or is that that's the self. So if we can spot that, put the Discord on her, just run her over. Or if we see the Brig, like the Brig's kind of far away, she's just now entering the fight. But yeah, like I would say, like right now, just run the Brig over, right? Like.
Oh god, I hate help.
Bubble.
Do you get chicken
Virgo,
score?
Virgo.
Bubble down.
But like here, we're kind of taking like a long time to poke, right?
Don't fight.
Zarya discord?
Okay, and then there it is.
Yeah.
So
Huge.
because we've been, this is a massive anti, right? So because we haven't been like playing,
Bigger.
like we, I've seen this hits the 6th person too. So it's like we spent way too much time poking, right? Like Zen, like the other thing that we didn't mention is that Ana's healing is way higher than Zen's healing, right? So in a poke battle, we lose because their healing outstrips ours by like quite a bit, right? So we want to like if we want to bait the nade, we like push in, act like we're getting aggressive, and then immediately like kite back out, right? or we just like, you know, like I said, just like commit to the fight and just make sure that our diva pushes the Ana at the same. But here we like spend a whole bunch of time poking. Eventually they hit a big nade. Now we're pretty much all dead.
We're anti.
Bring one.
No, we're anti. We're anti.
Lost your main heals.
Yeah.
Oh my god, he's ulting.
Yeah, and then he's got primal. He actually wasted
heals.
primal here. He doesn't need it for sure.
Oh my god, he's ulting.
Gotta play the game though. Come on.
Yeah. Like they won off that anti like 100%.
Oh,
Yo.
really? I'm getting Chris Brown all the way to here?
Same.
I think if the anti had hit the 6%, I think Quake would have been
Okay.
dead actually, because she was kind of low.
Yeah.
Where was the Ana setup? Did anybody see?
No idea.
Okay, so let's see how we take it the next time. Now we have ults. Like now it's going to be a little bit different, right? We can't just like get super aggressive because then they're going to grab and blah blah blah. So let's talk about ults. What do we think we're going to use? What do we think they're going to use? How do we counter what they're going to use?
They're gonna grab bomb.
Okay, grab bomb. And what do we use for that?
We can try to eat the grav.
Okay.
We're close to Zen's ult. If we have it in time, it can be against the grav, but not if they bomb.
Well, if they bomb, how are we going to block? Like
The rain.
yeah, the Rhine, right? So what do they have to stop a Rhine from blocking a bomb?
Rig.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the break,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So as long as we have bubbles, we should be invincible to bomb, right? Because we can ally bubble our Rhine so that he doesn't get bashed, and then we can personal bubble and like run into the bomb with personal to make sure it like mitigates like as much AoE as we can. So if we have these two bubbles, like we bubble these two people, we should be good because they can't pin our Rhine out, right? They can't do any of that. That sort of stuff. So like we actually only need one bubble, honestly. We just ally bubble this and we should be fine. So trance plus one ally bubble should counter grav bomb if that's what they want to do. The big thing about the grav that we should be thinking about is if we're going to trance a grav, what do we have to look out for?
Nade.
Anti again. Yeah. So again, we need to make sure our diva either A doesn't get caught in the grav or B knows exactly where the Ana is, even though she's like stuck in the grav. So but better is like not being in the grav and then pushing the Ana when we get grabbed, right? So that we can either eat the nade or pressure her enough that she can't throw the nade at the grav. Okay. What else do we see? I mean, rally for rally, right? That's probably going to happen. That almost always happens.
Yeah.
Maybe Nano Monkey. That's probably a big possibility. What can we do against Nano Monkey?
We're close to grab. We could defensive grab.
Mm-hmm. Especially since we know he spent primal, so we know he's only got 1 HP bar. He's not going to go through like 20 HP bars like he normally does, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. What do they have for like if we grab? What do they have for it?
Beat.
Just beat, right? So like, and they don't have a shield, so like our grav bomb is going to get way more value than theirs, right? We might not even need grav bomb, honestly, but if we need to clean it up like that, it's definitely a possibility. And then last thing to think about too in terms of this matchup is if they don't have like monkey bubble, shatter gets a lot of value, right? As long as we don't send it into Zarya bubbles, we should at least knock down 1 or 2 people, which can be really good too, right? Okay, so let's see how this plays out.
And if we can
They have
eat
no
those
personal?
nades too.
Zarya Discord.
Okay, so there I think they threw anti, right?
I have.
Yeah, I saw it. So they anti'd our Zarya, but she like instantly bubbled anyways. So So this is something that we need, like, because this is such like a hyper focus of ours, like in this comp versus this comp. If we see anti, definitely call it out, because then all of a sudden our diva, that's like 10 seconds that our diva doesn't have to be like hyper focused on like the Ana, right?
I have ground.
Okay, they use nade. I have bomb.
Okay, good. So they use nade. So really good call. We definitely want to be talking about that as much as possible. Here we end up. They rally.
Okay, they use nade.
They nano. They nano brig. It looks like.
Yeah.
And then we trance. What happens with this trance? Is it because
I have ground.
Okay, they use nade.
our Ryan's kind of like stuck in there?
Yeah.
Like, it's not low. Okay, so the trance is a little bit early, right?
Yeah, I panicked.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Like our Ryan is kind of split off. We're kind of worried about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't want him to die, so
Yeah. And we hear nano, so it's like, oh geez, they're like really engaging.
yeah.
But that's the big difference between this and this, right? Is like this can brawl for so much longer than the Winston. So it's like we're kind of still okay. But it's okay. Like they ended up grabbing now.
Bubble touch.
Oh, how does that?
Just raw. Yeah.
So okay, so that must have just been. So one of the big problems with this, right, is when the bomb is like up in the air above us, we need to all go the same direction, right? If we split up in the grav, there's like no protection for like from the Rhine. So if we're stuck in a grav and they start bombing, like as the Rhine, let people know which way you're gonna go so that everyone can go that way.
I don't even think I knew where the bomb was.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it because you didn't look up at all. Because you died to it with your shield up. I don't think you got bashed. You're like,
I had no
Yeah.
idea where it was.
right. But yeah, like, yeah, it's pretty tough. Like that bomb was kind of like wonky because it like slid off of like really weird stuff. But in general, still we should, because we're kind of assuming that it's going to be like either in the grav or just above it, right? So like call one direction. Like here, it would be, I would say, like, you know, go back to like spawn basically, like kite out main, and then, you know, we just put our shield up here, and then like, yeah, we probably would have to like look up a little bit, but
Touch. What?
How?
I bubbled you too.
okay.
Can you body block?
Okay, so now they spent a lot of ults. We spent a lot of ults. Now what are we looking for?
We have grab bomb.
Grav bomb, right?
They don't have a diva.
Yeah. So it's a grav swing, and then if they spend beat, then we should
back?
bomb. Is kind of how, like, we don't want to waste bomb if we don't have not waste, but we don't want to have to spend bomb if we don't have to. So if we can just grab and then just kill the Lucio while he's in grav, that's like even better, right? Like Bree can even just be looking to like shield bash him or something, and then we save ourselves an ult. Because grav bomb, generally speaking, is to overcome support ults, right? Especially trance. So they don't have that option. So
Still need heals.
we should plan
Thanks.
accordingly.
I'm healing you.
Okay, coming in
I've
and beating
shot.
3, 2, 1,
We're gonna
go.
die.
Okay, so we beat aggressive to run something over, and kind of just to get through the choke, right?
Beating
Shut
3,
up.
This is, I think, a good use of beat, especially like this is a good save, right?
2, 1,
We're gonna
go.
die.
I'm on the.
Okay, so like even here, like if we look at this setup, like look at where they're playing, how like where do we think we are in terms of how winning is this fight? Like, are we up 1, up 2, down 1, down 2? Like, if we had to put like a number between like 1 and 3, like how advantaged or disadvantaged are we in this fight right now, at this moment?
I think we have. Do we have a good advantage right here? We have grab bomb online. We have beat right now. We're in their space. Like we've made it through the choke.
Yeah, it's like some of their teams here, some of their teams here, and one of their team is here, right? So positioning wise, we're like way up, right? This is going to be a free kill, And then this is going to have to rotate back to the team. So that's probably going to be a free kill, right? Like this is real. They're in a really rough position. And then if you look at our HP bars, like, yeah, our Rhine is low after beat, but everybody else is so healthy because of the sound barrier. As long as we top up our Rhine or our Rhine plays a little bit passive, like after the beat is gone, we should just roll this, right? So we might not even need Grav Bomb, honestly. And like the Zarya even kites the wrong way, right? Instead of kiting back to the team, she kites onto point. This is another free kill right here. After the brig.
Brig.
I got slapped.
Yeah. So here we end up grabbing anyways, which is fine, you know. I think there's a... Hold on, let me listen.
I'm on this brig.
We don't talk enough about the Zarya, right? Like nobody's saying anything about how free the Zarya is.
I'm on this brig.
Brig, like that call is good. Like everybody's focused on that. Brig. And then we grab, and I think we get distracted by the grab when this still needs to die. This is a super high energy Zarya that's completely out of position from her team. Like the fact that the Zarya is like closer to our backline than like anything else is kind of crazy, right?
There's a Zarya behind this.
Yeah, so we just now called Zarya behind. Just now. After she's been in our backline for like, I don't know how long. That's a bit of a problem, right? And then we get slept so we can't bomb the Grav. Which, because they support ulted, would be a good option, right? Especially because they don't have like,
Zarya behind this.
Zarya one.
Okay.
I'm dead.
I don't know. You guys
Lucio's one.
Careful, Monkey's gonna try to boop you off.
Lucio discorded.
Okay.
Bubble down.
Monkey discord.
Okay. So we end up getting this fight because of like we're so like brawling. We had like such a huge pick at the start, but like it was messy, right? Like if you watch like how split we are, we're on like whenever your team, like whenever the distance between like one member to the next is like 30, 40 meters plus, it's like rough, right? When you're playing Death Ball, obviously when you're playing Dive and all that other stuff, it's good. But when you're playing Death Ball and like, especially thinking like the Rhine and the Brig, right? These are two characters that kind of like hold hands a lot of the time when you think about like goats. The fact that these two characters are so far apart, like I can instantly look at this and be like, this is a problem, right? Like almost every time.
I mean, the monkey's kind of bumping me around. Like...
Right, but this was like even before, right? Like that didn't have like Primal is like up here, and this is the situation we're in, right? He jumps after, but like this is like before the boops even start coming in from Primal, right?
Zarya's one. Zarya one.
But again, it's all because we didn't focus that Zarya earlier, I think. We didn't talk about how she's like pushing out of position. We didn't talk about her on the back line until like way later when the Zen had to turn around because we're like getting zapped by a Zarya in our back line.
I'm on
Bubble down.
Monkey discord. Lucio discord.
Get Diana.
Anna's in main.
Lucio one.
She's discord.
Lucio one on point.
Does that make sense? Like positioning wise, like it's easy to recognize from third person, right? But it's like way harder to see in first person, and that's why communication is so important, right? Like even our Lucio or our Zen or whatever, like you guys can call like, hey, we're split, like we need to group up, or you know, like so and so's like the enemy Zarya, right? Like Zarya's in our backline, like focus that first, right? Like this kind of communication is really important because a lot of characters can't tell what's going on. Like in that scenario where we grabbed, the Zarya, the Rhine, and the Diva were all looking forward and couldn't tell that the Zarya was like flanking, right? So they need to have that communication. And that's where like the Lucio and the Zen like really come in handy because they have like so much more vision of like what's going on, where the tanks are usually like very forward looking, right? So
That was
including the
clean.
brig, right? The brig's like kind of forward looking as well.
It's okay. We go main. I don't know about you, but my coach told me when there's a grav that I'm supposed to cleave into it as the brig.
That's true.
To be in its up in its shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah. When everybody's in it, but
I mean, there's people.
All right. Okay, so going into this next fight, kind of like, what do we think about ults? What are we thinking here?
We got Rally, we got Trans, we got Bomb, we have a Slammerino.
Yeah.
They got Grab, Rally.
So if they don't nade it, we can counter their grav.
Mm-hmm. So again, same thing. Try to keep the diva separate from the grab. I mean, the first thing to notice is like they're still on this comp. They haven't switched. They're still like monkey floats, which is like on a floats, which kind of should be like a weird thing, right? Like generally speaking, I think that should only kind of be like an A play where you can get countered really easy. But now that they're on B, it's kind of weird that they're staying on this. So like it's nice because we have like an advantage coming into this, right? But like, so keep that in mind, right? That we still have that sort of thing, and their playstyle is going to be a little different, right? We can bully chokes a little bit better, but we still have to worry about the anti. So sending, like potentially like sending Diva this way while we go that way, right? So that she can like watch the Ana and make sure we don't get naded while we like push through a choke. Situations like that, right? Same with the grav. We need to make sure we don't get antied. What else do we see? So transfer their grav. How do we want to use this bomb?
We could use it to displace them. If they're on like if they're on us on high ground or something, we could displace her.
Mm-hmm. So we could take high ground for free by like bombing up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're either gonna have to spend bubble or they're gonna have to do something about it, right? So that's an option. We could save it for grav. Our grav is getting kind of close, so we could save it for that. But we could also just like bomb to engage because again, they don't have a trance to worry about. So this grav, if the beat doesn't catch up to the grav, we kill grav no matter what. We don't need bomb to clean up gravs when we're against Ana, right? So we can be a little more liberal with our bombs, I think. Yeah, and then rally for rally again. Potentially shatter pretty soon after a little bit of a brawl.
So
see how this
Monkey
plays
left
out.
side. Monkey stun. They use bubble.
Okay, so they grab right away. They grab at an angle that the Onyx doesn't really have an angle anyways.
I don't think they bomb it.
No.
Yeah, they don't.
No.
Oh, I fell down. I'm going.
I fell down.
Back up.
Okay.
Oh.
I don't think they bomb it.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good boop
yeah.
by their Lucio. That's insane. Like most of the team gets booped out here, and it's basically like an environmental kill almost, right? Because for the people that can't get back in, like the Rhine Zen. So now all of a sudden we're like crazy split,
Back up.
and they get a pick off of it. So that was just like a boop play.
Diva Discord, Diva low.
Yeah, Diva's
Saria Discord, Saria on me, Saria on me.
Yeah, the second we got split, we got a pick. We should have backed up.
Yeah. I was just gonna mention that how like it's strange to me that none of the comms right now are like reset or kite or anything like that, right? Losing your Zarya, especially your Zarya, like getting a pick in goats in general is really powerful, but for it to be the Zarya is massive, right? It's so much of your damage gone.
I just did it right there.
Yeah, after 3 of us died.
Yeah, I mean, after we fed like a ton of ult charge, right?
I mean, I've said it like 80 times, so I figured that we're all on the same page for that already.
Okay, so then now they switch to Rhine, so they up their brawl quite a bit by doing that, but they're still on the Ana. So the things that we're talking about before, like our gravs, get more value, but our diva needs to be more like vigilant, right? Those types of things still apply. But the difference is we can't just push through this choke for free anymore, right? So maybe we need to approach this way first to sort of like clear off this high ground and make sure that we can like drop main and stuff like that without getting pressured too hard.
What?
Hanamura is kind of a tough map. It's pretty tough for attackers.
No bubbles. Let's get her.
Okay, so we beat to get aggressive.
What? Zarya has no bubbles.
I don't think we really talk about it though, right? Do we?
Okay, going in.
No energy
Two, what? Zarya has no
Yeah,
bubbles.
I don't think we
Let's get her.
really mention it too much. We need to make sure we're communicating, like, because our Ryan needs to know that he's basically invincible, right? So that he can swing at will.
Okay, I'm pushing her. Ana one.
Wait, what did they
Okay, I'm
do?
pushing her. Ana one.
Oh, their Ryan charges.
I'm stunned. Behind you guys.
I'm coming to help you. I'm on run.
I find this default this.
Okay, so this is a good point of like what I was talking about, right? Like, we definitely don't need bomb to clean up Grav. Everyone was already dead. And another thing too is like even more so is like they're down. Like these two picks, like these are so crazy important, right? Like them being down these two, as long as we group up, stick together, and like roll out, we should be fine.
I'm stunned. Behind you guys.
I'm coming to help you. I'm on run.
So I think that Grav bombing while we're up two is I think a little overzealous.
Point,
but,
everyone point.
so because they do get a recontest here, right?
I'm in tight.
Depending on how they roll out,
I don't have
Do you show Discord?
Lucio?
they're kind of staggering, so they don't get a good one.
Ana one.
Yeah. So they scuffed it. But like usually in this situation in 2CP, like you give up like 2.5 ticks and then you kind of roll out as like 5 or 6 people, right? Depending on who died and how fast. But they kind of rolled out in like kind of a scuffed way, and like I think we actually had a tick. Oh, we were getting ticks right here.
I'm coming.
Like so they didn't the diva wasn't paying attention to point, instead she was like pushing, right? So there's a couple reasons why we end up getting this for free.
I find this default Discord.
But does that make sense why I would say like maybe save Grav here a little bit longer?
Go point, everyone point.
Like to help like clean this sort of stuff up, right? If they came back out on like Hammond, Doomfist, like a bunch of stuff, they might actually be able to drain off a lot of the clock. But if we grab them, then it's just over right
Do you show
away.
Discord?
Lucio?
2-1. 1-5.
They see
Ana
that.
one.
C9er. That's a Charlie.
That's a Charlie Niner.
Yeah, they actually could have won off that combo too, right? Like they, like Grav, Bomb, Anti, they had like all of those available to them. If they
That was a
had
fat
C9.
cut too. It's a
Charlie
3-man.
Niner.
Yeah,
I think I kept
So.
half of it alone.
and so like counter grab there would have been nice, and you
You
know,
pulled some
all
red
that sort
shell
of stuff.
Reddit Lucio.
But oh, we do play. You guys do play bunker here, right?
And they can't.
Oh yeah.
They
we
can't like
usually-
clear. there.
This
Yeah,
one,
we
I don't.
I
put it
thought I
here.
checked this and I didn't see it. My
Well, it was really
Oh,
short
well,
if I
they can get
remember
that when they come in,
properly.
though.
bad. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but whatever.
It's easier to see when you're in third person.
Yeah. I think we got booped.
Spy check the door. Spy
Put it
check
in
the door.
Whoops.
They have a Hanzo? Hanzo Genshi?
I would have Summer. I got her. She's mine.
Okay.
You can see a midget struggling with his turret here.
That turret's prime for like attack reveals, right?
Yeah, so this is like a like Hanamura. It's funny that you like did this on Hanamura, but like because this is like a common turret placement, but didn't really think of necessarily like why, right? But it's like the same idea, right? Like Bastion gets to do this LOS, and then the turret covers like his back, right? So like you put the turret here, and it looks like everywhere where the Bastion like isn't looking, because the Bastion's looking this way. So it's like you have like 2-tier coverage, right? Like the more coverage, the better. And then it's like if they have to, like, how are they going to kill this turret without dealing with this first, right? And vice versa. How do they deal with this without dealing with the turret? Those are like the best ways to set up turret and Bastion together.
Oh, Summer's
Ball
down.
pass.
I don't know where she is.
Oh, shield going down, shield down.
They have a Farah.
Triple deep with
Someone's
him.
on point.
I'll go.
Okay, so this is also a really common thing. When teams are running triple, specifically in this situation, right? Like in terms of like point, we have to like, let's see, how do I phrase this? So like one of their like really big win conditions here is forcing a rotate out of our team, right? Because when we're rotating, we're at a huge disadvantage. We do like not nearly as much damage. We have, you know, like no mitigation because our shield is not a moving shield, right? We're not moving damage, we're not moving shield. So it becomes like a pretty big problem if we have to rotate, right? So one of the big ways that they force a rotate is they send Sombra and like Hammond to point. And then what do? We send Diva. How does a Diva deal with both of these characters? Right? It's going to be very difficult for her. So we end up doing like have to like give a lot of support, right? Torb might come help out. Baptiste has to focus a lot on that. Maybe he even throws Immortality Field down there to like try and help out. Like we got to make sure that we're ready to like stop the Hammond Sombra from like getting too much value on point. The other option, so one option is like send our Diva and give her a lot of resources. The other option is just rotate there immediately, right? Like as soon as we see that they're on like Hammond Sombra or like something along those lines, just get off high ground and just go there immediately, right? Because the same way that I was talking about before, where we want to like maximize our vision and minimize the approach angles, point does that pretty well, right? Like you can see out here pretty decently, you can see all up front, and then there's only like a couple approach angles because of the way it's like shaped, right? So point is decent. It's not great. It's not as good as high ground for sure, but it doesn't have the weakness of like the rotation thing. Does that all make sense? Like our two different options here when we're playing up against something like this?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's not like cart where we can like wait until it gets like right here and then just like contest it over and over with our Diva as she stays like in our group. Like we have to actually like send somebody out to do this.
Yeah, they got my turret.
She's going down. She's down. 1 second.
Okay, I'm out of Matrix.
Shield's going down. Shield is down.
Okay,
No
I'm back in.
Matrix.
Pulling
Oh,
me.
I fell.
Okay. Okay. So the Hammond doesn't really get scouted and we get booped off.
I'm back.
Oops.
I'm
Rotate,
rotating.
Yeah.
rotate.
Yeah. Yeah,
We
and
got
then they
booped.
take advantage of the rotate.
Pulling ball.
How's it
Also-
go?
Ooh. Okay. So if we have to set up on point, where do we want to set up, do you think?
In the stairs.
On the stairs, like right here? Or
In a corner to hide from Farah.
potentially. Pretty good option. But then if we're in a corner, we can't see too much, right? We can only see like point. So I think a big thing that we want to do, like if we set up here, like we can kind of go through the pros and cons, right? If we set up here, it's good because we can see like all of point. And we kind of have like a nice little like choke that we can like put our shield up and like not take any damage from point. But we have like our whole backside's like exposed, right? Farah can come from like this side, this side, this side, this side, or whatever. She can come from anywhere basically. So that's a bit tough. I don't think this area is very good, right? Because of that, right? And then again, all we're doing is still looking at point. So it's kind of like two cons, right? So we don't want to set up here. Setting up in a corner has the pro of now we can't get focused by, like we can't get jumped by Farah randomly, but it has the con of we can't really see too much, right? So if we set up like maybe here, like with our backs to like the bell, what this does is it still gives us sight of like main. We still have pretty good sight outside of point. And we can't really get jumped by the Pharah like immediately, right? Like as long as we're scouting and making sure that she's like not pushing through one of these like doorways or whatever, we'll be able to see her, right? And then if she walks through this tiny little door, we have a pretty good chance of like melting her before she gets in position, right? So yeah, I think like directly on point, like somewhere along like these lines is pretty good. Because then we can, you know, we can shoot out, see all this sort of stuff. And then we can even put like a turret like back here somewhere, or even like up here, even shooting over the point to like cover us, right?
Where we're supposed to.
We got boots.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and then like notice how like close the Pharah gets before we like.
I'm Mag.
Like, cause she just has so many approach angles, it's too hard to like look for her.
I'm one.
I try to heal.
Oh, I need help. Oh no.
You were purple.
So they're gonna have EMP barrage now?
Yeah, we're gonna use Ultra Blade, and then we're gonna go anti-DPS if they stay. They're probably gonna swap goats though.
What's anti-DPS? It's Sombra Goats? What do you call it?
With the
Sombra
Moira
Moira.
and the
And the Diva Ryan.
I'm
Winston,
gonna
Winston.
queue.
Okay. Okay, so we're staying on this. We see that they're not swapping, which kind of makes sense. And we think we can win this. Like, we think we can beat EMP. So this is like, it's kind of a risk though, right? Like, we're kind of gambling on the fact that we're going to be able to beat EMP. We also switched Winston. I don't know if that was...
I thought we were all switching, so I just switched off Larissa, and then I was like, oh, we still have a Bastion and a Torb.
We're gonna use
Oops.
Ultra Blade, and then we're gonna go anti.
Yeah, I think this is a really rough spot, right? Because they have a ton of ults, and even if we had gone to the like Somber Brig comp, it's like, well, maybe we still lose this anyways, just because they have so many ults, right? And we're resetting like our entire ult economy basically, except for like one, which isn't even full yet. So it's a pretty tough decision. I think you can go either way. I think like switching here is fine. Staying is fine. But we're gonna have to be really ready to outplay this this EMP.
Sombra Goats? What do you call it?
With the
Sombra Moira.
So we have to like tank mode for the EMP. We have to hide our diva, like all the same things I was talking about last time, right?
I'm entering behind.
Try to Valk, like Valk and tank, like while they EMP, and then
High ground.
try to re-engage with like AM Matrix
I
and
am
stuff.
purple. Rip.
I'm in half.
On the ball.
I'm in one. I have bombs. You can bait them on point. Honor,
There is some.
Wait, Bree, where were you?
Huh? I think it was in the stairwell.
Yeah, so it looks like you there. So they hack you, so you
I'm
like
dropping the
go,
point.
I am purple. Rip.
like you just stay in that staircase for a while, just like
I'm
hard
in
chilling.
I'm taking you
I'm in
poop.
one, I'm in one.
Yeah.
I have bombs.
And then
you
we
can
take
bait
from
them
like
on point.
flank. That's the second time that you've got EMP'd. They didn't focus you, and then now you're like flanking.
Look at that.
Honor,
There is
I'm
some
out.
on top. Careful.
Hanzo what?
On the
Hanzo
ball.
what?
I'm on the ball. Mercy? Mercy? Mercy in main?
Farah on me.
Okay.
Farah on me.
So luckily they're on like triple, and so they don't have a lot of really good point pressure, right?
On the Sombra point?
Somber dead, nice.
I'm on the
They're
Ana.
good. Bree
Left side.
switching.
One.
Do I have to cummies? We're good. We're good.
Purple.
right?
Purple. You are purple.
Cummies.
Farah one, Farah one.
Ana in main.
Yeah, he over.
Widow's top
Now they're
right.
gonna switch to
Running
goats.
in.
We're gonna switch to goats.
It took me a
Back
while
to
to
goat.
realize what you were saying.
Is Widow still top right?
Because I wanted to
No.
go anti-DPS, so if you use your ult swap, or Quake, you should probably just swap anyway, because we don't benefit that much from
Do
it.
I
Oh,
switch?
they're almost goats now. They might. Yeah, they switched.
Okay. Okay. You guys decide not to switch. What's the thinking here?
I want to use. I mean, they're goats and they have no ults, and I wanted to just come use them.
Okay. But if we if we use Molten Core, what are we not building, right? Is Grav. So if they get Grav first, like the first to switch is usually the team that's going to end up winning first, right? So we're also staying on like Mercy for a long time, which means our trance isn't going to be caught up either.
Yeah, we said to swap off Mercy, but I don't know why we stayed on Mercy.
Okay, we did.
I don't remember.
Okay,
Sorry,
we're
stop
two
left.
down. They're
Oh, we swapped so late though.
pushing. They're pushing. I'm
Okay, so we do end up swapping, which I think is good. It just took us like a super long time.
I'm going to point.
Oh my god, I need help.
Break on point.
And like I think that swap, like the swaps, just like ended up kind of
Discord.
messing up our engage, right?
Ball is on rain.
Bubble down. I'm on right. Ryan, taking some damage for you. Rip.
Zen is alone high ground.
We were just like too split off of the spawns, I think.
Rhino shark.
Diva behind.
Dead.
Oh. Shit,
Yeah.
I should win ball.
Time, right?
I can't.
That poor pin.
Touching that for long.
I have bubble coming out right side.
I must have bomb.
I have rally soon.
I bubbled you, but there's a Zarya on you.
Rain Discord.
Yeah, so like
Fine.
let's look at the timing of the switch. I think generally speaking, we should be like expecting this, right? Like most of the time when a team like loses after spending like a whole bunch of ults, they're probably gonna switch, especially when you're switching to like a counter comp, right? So we should be like holding tab here, and like right now we should say they're goats, right? Like we know they're goats. Oh, did I click back? Oh no, good.
Or Quake, you should probably just swap anyway because we don't benefit that much from
Do
it.
I switch?
Yeah, like this thing, like we're still like standing out here, like we're gonna keep playing Torb, but like our first thought was already that we would have been switching to Sombra anyways, right? Like that's what like Bree was calling.
Yeah.
So we should like already be in spawn, like waiting to swap, and then it's like, oh no, they're on goats instead of triple, like go Zarya instead of Sombra.
You don't get to
And then same thing with like the Mercy, right? Like the Mercy was gonna go Moira anyways, so we should have been in spawn waiting to switch to that.
No,
but-
I'm overloading.
Wait, you can if you want. Never mind.
Yeah. And then, yeah, it's like, then we're like stuck in this staircase when they're actually coming in, and it's like too late.
I'm going to point.
Oh my god, I need help.
Break on point.
Yeah, so it's just a like quickness thing, like especially on 2CP, we need to be prepared for that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're pretty close to the time, right?
Yeah, we are.
So, does anyone have any questions or want to ask any questions or comments, concerns, anything like that?
I'm good too. Everything made sense.
Okay, cool. So yeah, just like the main summary, like the main thing to think about, like in terms of bunker, was like the stuff that I talked about before, like the positioning, and like the ultimate usage, right? Avoiding EMP, and then for your guys' goat stuff, the main thing that I saw was like communication, totally communication, right? Obviously like the play was like good, like when you guys were coordinated, but when you didn't know like what people were on and who was weak and like all that sort of stuff, that's when it started breaking down into like scraps, right? So if we can communicate a little more, we can talk a little more about what we're doing, why we're doing it, like who we're going on, like all that sort of stuff. I think your guys' goats would get a lot better for sure. Okay. That's all I have.
I'm eating, but thank you.
What?
She said, I'm eating, but thank you.
Oh.
All right. If there's nothing else, I'm going to take off.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for taking the 2 hour. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, very appreciated.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
I'll put sneaky turrets for the Sombras.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Thanks.
See you
Have a
guys.
nice evening.
Night.
Hi, Annie. I hope you feel better soon. We miss you.
We miss you.
Get a lot of rest.